I had always believed that success was a matter of time. Hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. These were the ingredients I thought were enough to build a life of stability and comfort. For the past 15 years, I had poured my heart and soul into my business. Every sleepless night, every decision, no matter how small, was made with a single goal in mind: to make sure my company thrived, to ensure that one day it would be my legacy. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I was in control. But nothing prepares you for the moment when everything you've worked for is suddenly taken away. The day it all started to unravel, I remember the exact moment. I was sitting at my desk reviewing some important files. The office was silent, the kind of silence that happens late in the day when everyone has gone home, and it's just you and the hum of the computer screen. I had always enjoyed these quiet moments when the world outside seemed far away, and I could think clearly, uninterrupted. But that evening, everything changed with a phone call. The number on my phone was familiar. John, my brother. He had been my right-hand man for as long as I could remember. For nearly a decade, we had built this company together. We'd shared successes and failures, each step of the journey side by side. He was the one person I trusted implicitly, or so I thought. "Alex, we need to talk," his voice said over the phone, calm but carrying a weight that immediately made me uneasy. At first, I thought it was just another business update, a routine conversation about numbers or strategy. But I could sense that something wasn't right. It was the tone of his voice, the way he said it. There was a hesitation that I'd never heard before. I brushed it off. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe it was just the stress. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The next morning, when I arrived at the office, the air felt different. The usual hum of activity was missing. I went straight to my desk, but before I could even sit down, something caught my eye. My computer screen was filled with emails, countless emails, and not one of them was what I expected. As I began scanning through the messages, my stomach sank. Our business accounts were frozen. Our assets gone. The company I had worked so hard to build vanished. I rushed to check the bank accounts, and it hit me like a punch in the gut. Everything had been drained. Millions of dollars all vanished in an instant. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. How was this possible? Who would have the power to do something like this? And why? That's when I saw it. A small note in the email inbox. It was from John. "Alex, I'm sorry, but it had to be done. I never meant for it to go this far. Please don't hate me." My mind went numb. My own brother had stolen everything I had worked for. And the worst part? He hadn't even had the decency to explain why. As I sat in my office staring at the empty screen of my computer, I couldn't move. I couldn't process what had just happened. The betrayal felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about family. John wasn't just my business partner. He was my brother, the one person I thought would always have my back. The phone call I had received earlier echoed in my head. John had never been the type to make rash decisions. He was always level-headed, calculated. So, why would he do this? Why would he betray me like this? And not just that. Why was he so calm in his message? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. But where could I even begin? My first instinct was to track John down, to confront him, to demand answers. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. This wasn't just about him taking the money. It was about something much bigger, something that had been festering for years. The idea of going to the police crossed my mind, but I couldn't do that. I knew that once I brought them into this, there would be no going back. I wasn't just fighting for my business anymore. I was fighting for everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed. And if I couldn't get the answers I needed from John, then I was going to have to find them elsewhere. I began searching through the company's financial records, the ones that hadn't been erased. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon an encrypted file that I felt a glimmer of hope. I had seen this file before. It was locked with a password that only John knew. Or so I thought. The file's name was Final Plan. What the hell was that? Why would John have a file named like that? I had to find out what was inside. With my heart pounding in my chest, I began the process of unlocking it. Every second felt like an eternity. What was I going to find? Was this a plan to ruin me? To take everything I had? Or was there something else, something deeper that I wasn't seeing? The file opened with a simple click, and my eyes scanned the first few lines of text. And then I saw it. The words that sent a chill through my spine. It's time to finish what we started. As the words from the encrypted file lingered in my mind, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread wash over me. What had John meant by finish what we started? What had we started? My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. I had known John my entire life. He was my brother, the person I had trusted with everything. And yet, in one cold moment, he had shattered that trust. And now, it seemed like everything was falling apart. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen in front of me. The file had opened with a simple text document, and the first lines seemed almost cryptic, like a message only John and I would understand. But as I read through the rest of the file, things started to take a darker turn. There were names, dates, and locations I didn't recognize, places I had never heard of. And the most disturbing part? It seemed like John had been planning something for months, something that involved not just our company, but other people I didn't know. My mind went blank for a moment, trying to process the information. How could I have missed all this? I had always trusted John, and yet it seemed like he had been playing me from the start. What was his end game? What had he gotten himself into? I had to confront him. I had to get the answers, even if it meant dragging him back from wherever he was hiding. I grabbed my coat, my mind still spinning with possibilities, and headed out the door. My car sat idly in the driveway, the engine cold. I started the car, the hum of the engine a small comfort in the overwhelming silence. I needed to find John. I needed to understand what was going on, but I had no idea where to start. The first place I thought to go was his apartment. It was the one place I could rely on, his sanctuary, where he had always been after a long day of work. But when I got there, things didn't feel right. The door was unlocked. That wasn't like him. John had always been careful, meticulous about everything, including locking up. I stepped inside, my heart pounding as I called out his name. But there was no answer. The apartment was eerily quiet, just like the rest of my life had become. I walked through the familiar rooms, glancing at the bookshelves, the pictures on the wall, and the old sofa where we used to sit and talk about business, life, and everything in between. But today, everything felt different. The pictures on the walls felt distant. The rooms seemed hollow, as if they were only shells of the memories I once held dear. I searched through the apartment, not knowing what I was looking for, but hoping for something, anything that would help me understand what had happened. In his study, I found a pile of papers scattered across his desk. I shuffled through them, but most of them were business-related. Contracts, invoices, and other mundane details that had once been my world. But then I noticed something different. A letter. A handwritten letter. It was sealed with an unfamiliar stamp, and the handwriting was unlike anything I had ever seen before. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The letter was short to the point, and signed by someone named M. Lancaster. The words were chilling. You know what must be done. You've been a part of this from the beginning. Don't back out now. Time is running out. My mind raced. What was this about? Who was M. Lancaster? And how did John fit into all of this? I felt a growing sense of urgency. This wasn't just about money or betrayal anymore. This was something far more dangerous, something that could affect more than just me. I needed answers. I had to find John, and I had to do it fast. I left John's apartment, my head spinning with more questions than answers. The letter had unsettled me more than anything else I had found. Who was M. Lancaster? Why had John gotten involved with someone like this? And what had they been planning? My gut told me this was no longer just about business. It was about something much darker. I had to find John, and I had to do it quickly. My next step was to contact the people who had been closest to him. I reached out to his old business partner, a man named Tom, who had been with us in the early days. Tom was old-fashioned, reliable, and didn't mince words. If anyone knew what John had been up to, it was him. When Tom picked up the phone, his voice was gruff, as usual. Alex, what's this about? You sound different. I need your help, Tom. Have you heard from John lately? I think something's gone horribly wrong, and I need to find him. Now. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Tom spoke, his voice laced with uncertainty. John's been acting strange for months. I didn't want to believe it, but he's been meeting with some people I don't trust. I don't know what's going on, Alex, but it's not good. My heart sank. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a descent into something much darker. I had no idea what John had gotten himself into, but it seemed like he was too deep to get out now. Whatever had happened, it was beyond our control. Tom agreed to meet me, and we arranged a time at a nearby cafe. I needed to hear what he knew. I needed something concrete, something that would help me understand why John had betrayed me in the way he had. Why he had destroyed everything we had worked for. Alex, I've been trying to keep track of John, but he's been erratic. I'm telling you, he's not the same guy you used to know. He's involved in something dangerous, Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. I leaned in, trying to process what he was saying. I had known John for years. He was my brother, my business partner, my confidant. How could he have changed so much? Dangerous? What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my insides were churning. Tom glanced around the cafe, ensuring no one was listening. Look, John's been meeting with people who are known to be involved in underground dealings. Illegal stuff, money laundering, maybe even arms dealing. I don't know the full extent, but it's bad, Alex. Real bad, Tom said, his voice strained with concern. My stomach dropped as the realization hit me. This wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. This was something far more sinister. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice rising with a mix of anger and disbelief. Why didn't you say something sooner? Tom shrugged, his eyes avoiding mine. I didn't want to believe it either, Alex, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. John's been acting like a different person. I tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen. He's in deep, and I don't think there's any way out for him now. I sat back, my mind racing. My brother, the man I trusted with everything, was involved in something this dangerous? My thoughts spiraled as I tried to piece together the puzzle. Why had John done this? What had driven him to betray me, to destroy everything we had built? I pulled the letter from my coat pocket and slid it across the table to Tom. "What do you make of this?" I asked, my voice trembling with the weight of the question. Tom picked up the letter, scanning it quickly before his face went pale. "This is it," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "This is the message, the one he's been hiding. He's been working with Lancaster, the guy who's been running everything from the shadows. John's not just involved. He's been a part of it from the beginning." Tom's words hit me like a punch to the gut. Lancaster? I had heard the name before, but I never imagined it was connected to something like this. My mind raced as I tried to recall everything I knew about Lancaster, but nothing made sense. Why would John get involved with someone like that? What did he have to gain? I reached for my phone, intent on calling John. I had to find him. I had to get the answers, no matter what it took. John didn't answer his phone. I called again. And again. Each time, my frustration grew. I had to find him. I couldn't let this go. Whatever mess John had gotten himself into, I needed to get him out. This wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about saving him from himself. I spent the rest of the afternoon tracking down every lead I could find. I reached out to anyone who might have information on John's whereabouts. I contacted his old friends, his associates, but no one seemed to know anything. It was like he had disappeared off the face of the earth. As the sun began to set, I received a call that would change everything. "Alex, it's Tom," the voice on the other end said, breathless. "I found something. You need to come to the old warehouse on 4th Street. It's about John." My heart raced. I had no idea what Tom had found, but I knew it was important. I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door, heading straight for the warehouse. My mind was a blur as I drove through the city, each turn feeling like it was pulling me closer to something I wasn't sure I was ready for. When I arrived, Tom was standing outside, looking pale and shaken. "I don't know if we should be here, Alex," he said, his voice trembling. "This doesn't feel right." "Tell me what you found," I demanded, my voice sharp with urgency. Tom hesitated for a moment, then led me inside. The warehouse was dark and musty, filled with old crates and equipment that hadn't been touched in years. But as we walked deeper into the building, something caught my eye. There, in the corner, was a stack of boxes. And on top of those boxes was a small sealed envelope. Tom picked it up and handed it to me. "This was left here, Alex. It has your name on it." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was another letter, written in the same hand as the one I had found at John's apartment. The words were chilling. "You were always meant to find this. John is no longer who you think he is. The business is over. But you can still stop it. Do you want to?" The letter was signed with just one name, M. Lancaster. I stood there, frozen. The letter confirmed everything Tom had said. John was deep in something dark, something I couldn't even begin to understand. But one thing was clear. I couldn't back out now. I had to finish what we started, no matter the cost. As I stood in that dark warehouse, holding the letter in my hands, a flood of emotions washed over me. My mind was racing, and my thoughts were in chaos. What was Lancaster's involvement? What had John gotten himself into? And most importantly, Why had he chosen to involve me in this twisted mess? Tom, noticing my silence, took a step closer. "What are we going to do, Alex?" he asked softly, his voice full of concern. I didn't know what we were supposed to do. I had no answers, but I knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back. "I'm going to find John," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "We're going to fix this." I knew that meant confronting Lancaster, and I didn't know if I was ready for that. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no other way. If I wanted to save my brother and our business, I had to face whatever lay ahead. We left the warehouse, and I could feel Tom's unease, his footsteps heavy as he walked beside me. I wasn't sure if he was walking for me or if he was walking out of his own fear, but we had no choice. We were in this together now. I drove to the address that was scribbled on the back of the letter. It led me to an industrial part of the city. The buildings were old and run down, the streets narrow and dimly lit. It felt like we were entering a place where time had long stopped, and nothing good could come from it. "Stay here," I told Tom as I pulled up in front of the building. He looked at me with wide eyes, as if trying to talk me out of it, but I was already out of the car before he could say a word. The door to the building creaked open as I pushed it. Inside was a dimly lit hallway. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of old wood and concrete filled my nostrils. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever was inside. Lancaster was here. And this time, I was determined to confront him face to face. I followed the hallway until I reached a small office. The door cracked open. I could hear voices inside. One of them sounded like John. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Was he working with Lancaster willingly, or had he been forced into this? I knocked lightly on the door. The voices fell silent. I opened the door slowly and stepped inside. There, sitting at a desk with his back to me, was Lancaster. He was an older man, with graying hair and a cold, calculating look on his face. He didn't turn around when I entered. Instead, his voice cut through the silence. "I knew you would come eventually," Lancaster said. His tone was calm, almost mocking. "Where's my brother?" I demanded, stepping further into the room. Lancaster finally turned to face me. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in his gaze. Recognition, maybe? Or was it fear? "You're too late," Lancaster said, his voice low. "John's already made his choice. He's already on his way to make a deal that will change everything. And if you're smart, Alex, you'll stay out of it." I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "What deal? What are you talking about?" Lancaster stood up from his chair, his movements deliberate and slow. "You wouldn't understand," he said, walking toward me. "But I think you're already beginning to see the bigger picture. John is lost to me now, and there's nothing you can do to save him." His words were like daggers, piercing the hope I still clung to. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. "I'm not leaving until you tell me where my brother is." Lancaster's lips curled into a cold smile. "I warned you," he said. "But if you want to know so badly, you'll find him. He's already where he belongs." The next few days were a blur. I spent every waking moment trying to track down Lancaster, trying to find any trace of him that would lead us to the truth. John and I worked together, sifting through old records, phone calls, and even emails that might give us a clue about where Lancaster had gone. But no matter how hard we searched, it was like he had disappeared into thin air. John was no longer the man I once knew. He had lost himself in his own guilt, in his own shame. Every time we spoke, he seemed smaller, more broken, but I couldn't afford to let him fall apart. I needed him. We needed each other if we were going to fix this. Finally, I got a breakthrough. A lead. It wasn't much, just a small detail in a financial report that had been buried deep within the company's records. It pointed to a company Lancaster had recently invested in, a company that, coincidentally, had been under investigation for money laundering. I looked at the report, the weight of the discovery hitting me like a ton of bricks. Lancaster wasn't just a businessman, he was a criminal, and he had been using my company to launder money. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but I was going to take down Lancaster. I was going to expose him for what he truly was, and I was going to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The next step was clear. I needed to get to the company, confront Lancaster, and finally put an end to his reign of terror. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not after everything he had done. The night before I was set to confront Lancaster, I stood in front of the mirror, taking a deep breath. I was no longer the man I had been before all of this. The trust I had in my brother, in the people I had worked with, had been shattered. But that wasn't going to stop me. It wasn't going to stop me from taking back my life. The time had come. It was time to face Lancaster. And it was time to win.